Hello, everyone, and welcome to Amanpour. Here's what's coming up.
We move quickly to send Ukraine significant amounts of weapons and ammunition so that they can repel Russia's aggression.
Biden ups the weapon ante in Ukraine as the Kremlin says the U.S. is adding fuel to the fire. So will it turn the tide on the ground? I asked Yuri Sak, an advisor to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense. And
Добрый вечер, в Москве 21 час. Вы смотрите телеканал «Дождь». Информационная программа «Здесь и сейчас».
the remarkable story of TD Rain. I speak to the co-founder of Russia's now shuttered independent news channel, Natalia Sindeyeva, and the film director who profiled it, Vera Krichevskaya. Plus, the institution at the heart of Britain's political elite. We find out how Oxford University has shaped Prime Minister Boris Johnson and those in his party with Simon Cooper, author of Chums. Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Bianna Golodriga in New York, sitting in for Christiane Amanpour, who will be back next week. The United States is doubling down on its support for Ukraine, providing the country with more advanced rocket systems and munitions as its war with Russia grinds on. In a New York Times op-ed, President Joe Biden said the U.S. goal is to see a democratic, independent, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine with the means to deter and defend itself against further aggression. The new systems will be equipped with munitions that will allow Ukraine to launch rockets about 49 miles. That's far less than the system's maximum range, but far greater than anything Ukraine has been sent to date. So what is Ukraine's view on the new weapons? Are they enough to hold Russia back? Yuri Sak is an advisor to Ukraine's Minister of Defense, and he joins me now. Mr. Sak, thank you so much for joining us. So first, let me get your reaction to this announcement from the United States that the administration will be providing your government with longer-range missiles.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Of course, our reaction is one of gratitude, and we are very thankful to the American people. We are thankful to the administration of the United States. And this is something that Ukraine needs now very much, because as you know, the situation in the East on the battlefield is very difficult. It's getting more and more intense by the day. This war, we as Ukraine, we would like to end it sooner rather than later, because if this war is a protracted war, this will result, among other things, in a food crisis that could kill millions of people in North Africa and Middle East. You know, Ukraine is one of the largest provider of agricultural products. So, and now Ukraine is unable to do that because the Black Sea is blocked by the Russian aggressors. So we are very, very thankful for this announcement. We hope that we will get these new long-range weaponry fast, and we will be able to use it efficiently in order to continue to liberate Ukraine, protect Ukrainian cities, protect Ukrainian people.
As you noted, Russia is making some advancements there in the east. Russian forces now control about 70% of Severodonetsk in eastern Ukraine. And the Ukrainian troops are pushing back as well and retreating, at least for the time being. I'm just curious, you told the Financial Times just today, our president has said many times, had we received these weapons, these longer-range missiles, before the situation, it would be different, with less occupied regions in the hands of Russia today. What would the situation look like, and how can you be so confident that Russia wouldn't have made the inroads that it is currently making now?
Well, look, Ukrainian army has shown in these 3 months that it is very highly motivated, it is very professional, and even with the means that we had, and thankfully we received some important light weaponry at the beginning of this aggression, Ukrainian army was able to liberate Kyiv and Kyiv region. Ukrainian army was capable of liberating Chernihiv and Chernihiv region. Ukrainian army was most recently capable of pushing the aggressor back from Kharkiv. And this is, the achievement of our army. And the aggressor's army was unable to achieve any major significant military success. So from this perspective, of course, when Ukrainian army gets more efficient, more long-range weapons, of course, it will be even more efficient in resisting the enemy and in expelling the enemy from our lands. And indeed, I will repeat that, if we had these long-range systems before, the situation would have been different in places like Kherson, in places like Mariupol. So from this perspective, it is very important that we will begin receiving these weapon systems now.
So the weapon system that you will be receiving, these missiles have a trajectory of about 49 miles. What you had been asking for are missiles that could go up to 200 miles. Obviously, the concern from the United States is how far inside of Russia and Russian territory these missiles would penetrate. I want to play for you sound from Secretary of State Antony Blinken about some of the assurances he says he received from your government about the use of these missiles.
Specifically with regard to weapon systems being provided, the Ukrainians have given us assurances that they will not use these systems against targets on Russian territory. There is a strong trust bond between Ukraine and the United States, as well as with our allies and partners.
How do you uphold these assurances in the fog of war? Where will these missiles hit, and where will you not be striking?
The question of military strategy, of course, is within the exclusive competence of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. And there is a very limited number of people who, in fact, have access to that information. But what we have said many times is that Ukraine is a peaceful nation. Throughout our history, we've never attacked any of our neighbors. And this is not the war that we began. The aggression occurred because of the large-scale invasion of Russia. So from this perspective, the only reason we need weapons, of course, is to, I will repeat, to liberate Ukrainian cities, to deoccupy Ukrainian cities, to restore peace within the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. And as our President Zelensky has said many times, and our Minister of Defense as well, Alexei Reznikov, said this many times, for us, the most important thing is to push the enemy back, to achieve the withdrawal of the army of the aggressor to the level at least before February 24th. And then diplomatic means will be there to decide further important political issues. But we are a peaceful nation. We are still coming to terms with the fact that in 2022, Ukraine, a country in the middle of Europe, is suffering from missile strikes. As we speak with you now, I get updates on my phone momentarily. There are air raid sirens in most cities in Ukraine now. The cities like Mykolaiv, Sumska Oblast, they've been hit today by Russian missile strikes. So, and in fact, those people who are on on the front lines of this war, they've been saying that it sometimes almost feels like Russians have built ammunition factories right there on the battlefield, because they don't stop shooting heavy artillery, air bombardments, missile strikes.
It's incessant bombardment, and listen, we've been reporting since that invasion began. I mean, these images we're seeing are akin to images that we saw in the Second World War, and it's still hard to come to grips with this happening in 2022. Let me ask you, we spent a lot of time early in this war and in this conflict talking about the lack of morale within the Russian military and the tremendous number of troops lost. Now we're seeing President Zelensky even acknowledge the impact this is having on Ukrainian soldiers. They're fighting in the east, where he's saying that the country is losing upwards of 100 soldiers even a day. What is the morale now amongst Ukrainian fighters, and how concerned are you that this high death toll will continue?
Well, the death toll is currently high because the fighting is very intense. And having not achieved any significant success militarily, Russia, of course, have thrown all the firepower that it has on a relatively small patch of the front line in the Luhansk and Donetsk regions. So from this perspective, of course, the death toll is higher now because Russians are using everything they have in that direction. You know, cities like Severodonetsk, like Lysychansk, in the Luhansk region. So from this perspective, and of course we have, in addition to those brave Ukrainian soldiers who are killed, we also have almost up to 500 wounded every day.
Right.
But what we have to understand is that the Ukrainian soldiers, they are very highly motivated because they are fighting for their own land. Ukrainian army, many of those who now serve in the Ukrainian army, in their life before the war, they used to be IT specialists, businessmen, doctors, and they are fighting for their land. Look, since the beginning of the war, 243 children were killed and countless others were wounded. So the motivation of our army remains very high. We speak to our soldiers on the front lines. They continue to incur damage on the Russian aggressor, both in manpower and in equipment. And of course, now that we will be receiving more heavy weaponry, more long-range systems, this will, of course, boost the motivation of the Ukrainian army even more because they will understand that the support will be arriving soon. So the liberation and deoccupation will begin to happen faster and sooner. So from this perspective, we are confident in the Ukrainian army and we will continue to fight and resist and liberate our land until the enemy is gone.
Can I get you to respond to reports that over the past few weeks, it seems that the narrative inside the Kremlin, at least, is that the momentum has shifted and that there are some in leadership, perhaps Vladimir Putin himself, who believe that this war can be won by the Russians and that perhaps they can even make another stab at going after Kyiv. Your response to these reports and how seriously do you take that?
Of course, it is too early to relax, and we have been saying this on a daily basis. Russia continues to use the tactics of terror by the missile strikes, and there is not one city in Ukraine which potentially is not a target for Russian missiles. So from this perspective, the risk remains high, and this is why, in addition to the long-range weaponry, we are also asking our international partners to provide us with modern NATO standard air defense systems, because they are also crucial for Ukraine. They're crucial for us to be able to close our skies. So yes, Kyiv now is gradually returning to, you could say some form of normality, but at the same time, everybody understands and appreciates that this war is far from over. And, we are dealing with a very dangerous, deranged enemy who is capable. We have seen what this enemy is capable of, all kinds of atrocities. There's hardly any war crime they have not committed in Ukraine. So from this perspective, we continue to be alert. We continue to understand that the risks are still high, and we continue to defend.
You mentioned the assistance from other allies within NATO. We spend so much time focusing on U.S. assistance and the large scale of weaponry coming from the United States, but obviously that is not the only member of NATO who has at least promised military weaponry for your country. I want to get your thoughts on Germany's role in this, because some reports suggest that since March 25th, Germany has only sent 2 arms to Ukraine. Is that true? And just today, Olaf Scholz announced that Germany will supply Ukraine with an advanced air system. Are you anticipating the delivery of that air system? And what is your response overall to Germany, Europe's largest economy's role in aiding your country?
Like I already said, we are grateful to all our international partners. And, there are now in the Ramstein format, more than 44 countries who have publicly made a commitment to support Ukraine in this aggressive war, in which Russia threatens not just Ukraine, but of course the whole of Europe. So, and of course our ambassador to Germany, for example, has been very vocal about this. On the one hand, we appreciate the support and the rhetoric that the German leadership is using. They are supporting Ukraine publicly. They are condemning Russia's aggression, and they have been promising delivery of variety of different heavy weaponry as well. You know, Marder tanks, this was an earlier promise. Now, indeed, we heard today about these air defense systems, IRIS. It is very difficult for me to evaluate. We hope that it will happen, and we hope that it will happen soon, and we hope that there will be no procrastination or no bureaucratic delays, because we need those systems, we need those weapons, and, you know, it would be very useful